So thank you so much, Sanjay. Very generous introduction, and very good morning to all our friends. I experienced some great traffic today, and I'm from Delhi, so I didn't expect this, but it was a good learning. So we are supply chain guys, we try to maneuver through everything, and that's what we try to do and be here on time. So we have a very august panel with us, and I would like to, ask each panelist to please briefly introduce yourself so that, we are in context to why we are here. Please.
Thanks, CK. I'm Chetan Thakur. As Sir has mentioned, I become a half Malaysian as well, working with a Petronas. So this is my current organization, and I'm carrying 26 years of experience working in a industry agnostic environment. Work for Pepsi, Kellogg's, Lever, Baxter, right? Work for startups and now work for oil and gas, right? Touch base, right? All the important 4 verticals of supply chain, which is plan, procure, manufacturing, and delivery. So that's about me.
Hello everybody, my name is Kapil Premchandani and I work in the capacity of Solutions Manager at KD Supply Chain Solutions Private Limited. Our organization essentially works in the capacity of third-party logistics provider for companies in the consumer space. In consumer space, we work with brands, as Sanjay rightly pointed out, Procter & Gamble, Mondelez, Colgate, Reckitt Benckiser, GSK, Haleon, Amway, amongst many others. We also work in lubricant sector with Castrol and Valvoline. We work in the paint sector with Asian Paints. We also work with Shalimar Paints, and we also work in the apparel sector where we essentially handle supply chain for brands like Shop Stop, for brands like Spiker, Turtle, TCNS. This is about us. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Kapil. My name is Milind Mandlik, and I've been in the professional experience of 25 years. As Sanjay was saying, we work together in Huntsman, but let me quickly tell you the story. Before that, he interviewed me in Thermo Fisher, and we closely missed it. So we made it in Huntsman together again. But having said that, I've worked with Bayer, German company, Huntsman, a very small years of working with Tata, Class H, and now with Ashland, responsible for Asia Pacific supply chain, which covers the replenishment planning, warehousing, transportation, customer order management. When I say 25 years experience, it gives me a feeling of silver jubilee, but at the same time, knowing that today's world, when they look at people between, 40 to 50 as corporate cholesterol, it also takes me a sit back saying, am I saying the right thing on the forum? But the answer is yes. So here I am.
Good morning. I heard the master of ceremony said that all of us had a nice coffee. So let's see how much energy we have in the room. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's better. So I'm Rajiv. I work for Luminous. So Luminous is a 100% subsidiary of Schneider Electric. So as we know, Schneider continuously has got #1 by Gartner in supply chain. So this year also, Gartner has rated Schneider supply chain as #1. So I started my career with Tatas, so worked for Timex, Titan, worked for LG, was involved in their supply chain in Greater Noida and Pune, worked for Motorola to build their supply chain in India, and then we opened our factory in Chennai. Then with Samsung, and from Samsung I moved to Luminous, and when Luminous was with Schneider Electric. So I worked in various departments of supply chain, so through and through experience of supply chain, right from manufacturing, procurement, purchase, logistics, and all other functions, including R&D. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Satyendra Patidar. I work for Asian Paints. Have been with Asian Paints for close to 18 years. Before that, I briefly, for 2 years, did consulting in supply chain. Have moved across part of supply chain, right from planning and distribution to manufacturing, and now I'm looking after supply chain of industrial vertical of Asian Paints, which is called Asian Paints PPG. It's a joint venture with PPG. Really pleasure to be with the veterans of supply chain as well as the larger supply chain community. Look forward to spending not the hour but the rest part of the day as well with you all and learn together as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to each one of the panelists. It's great to have such an experienced panel amongst us. Everyone here over 2.5 decades of experience, so that is close to more than 130 years of experience together. The topic for today that we're going to discuss and engage in discussion is largely on strategic agility, and how we are overcoming the disruptions which are being caused throughout the supply chain, both in India and across the world. We'll try to shed some thoughts around how things are evolving, what are changing, and why and how we as supply chain leaders and companies should be agile and have this agility in our strategic roadmap so that we can overcome these kind of challenges. We were, thinking and discussing together in the morning that we are in a time and era where we are seeing most of the disruptions coming through a trade war which has started. Earlier, it was a time when there was a real war which was happening in the Gulf and Middle East and Russia, Ukraine, which caused disruptions. And now it's another kind of a war, which is trade war, which is being unleashed around the world, which is also causing a lot of disruptions. Prior to that, there was Corona. We all have gone through the COVID-19 phase, the kind of disruption we saw there. So these kind of disruptions happen globally. Then if we come back to where we are staying in India, we are in emerging economy. We have been in this stage since the last 10, 15 years. We've been emerging. We've been growing at 8%, 6%, every year, and we are the largest growing economy. Cities have been developed. Many multinational companies are setting up their operations in India. Purchasing power is going up. So there are a lot of economic activities which are happening, and industry by large has been on its foot to match up with this growth. Now we as supply chain leaders, did not see this coming. We had not put this in our roadmap, but this is a reality we had to face every day in, day out, and manage those changes, disruptions, as we call it, the VUCA world, which was going on around us. In this panel, we are also going to, discuss about how do we stay resilient with these changes which are happening around us, and how do we adapt to these changes, right? I will start my discussion with Mr. Satyendra. And I would like to, just ask you about, how important is supply chain agility in a highly competitive marketplace? What strategy, in your experience, has worked with you in Asian Paints? And you've been there for 18 years, so you can, show us the way, how do we overcome this, and how have you done it in your company?
Great. Thanks, Chetan. So let me first reflect a bit on how the context of the entire planning and agility is evolving. So when we started a career, 15, 18 years, 20 years back, there used to be a way planning used to happen, multi-year planning, long-term planning kind of this thing, and you'll work in these spreadsheets and project future and typically stick to that and move ahead. From there on to now, I think there is one change which has happened and which has significantly affected the way we plan and we manage our business is the disruptions or the changes. Many coefficient which we used to work in terms of how if economy works, this is how it will happen. Many of them are going for a toss. So there is a huge change which is happening right from the geopolitical to COVID to shifting of demand pattern to entry of new businesses or new competition and so on and so forth. So I think the agility is the key for anyone to survive and thrive in the today's marketplace. Now, how do we make it happen from a supply chain standpoint? So finally, supply chain serves the business or serves the customer. And if that has to happen, I see it in two buckets. One is at the planning stage itself. How agile is our planning? And when we say in the planning, how can you be agile? Okay, finally you work through the numbers and project your numbers and then plan right from your procurement, capacity, distribution network and so on and so forth. So I think the approach of that planning, the planning is still required, but probably the modularity and flexibility in that planning. And earlier if you used to relook at it once in a year, probably here you now need to look at once in a quarter as to how planning versus actual is happening. So that entire piece of planning is where the, the agility or the flexibility is required, right from the procurement of how you set up contracts with the vendors to the manufacturing setup where you want to invest capex, what is the phasing of that capex that may change based on how you evolve. At some point of time when we set up a plant, we would say that 5 years down the line, any company for that matter would say that 4 year or 5 year down the line, this is the plant, this is the factory which will come up and will produce so product. Today you can't operate that way. In 5 years, lot can change. So how is your planning in such a way that you can incorporate some changes 2 years down the line as well as you are in the, planning or the detailing phase of the project. Same is for the distribution network. Distribution network is evolving like anything. Okay, right from the 3PL to the logistics, the way it is evolving. One side there is a pressure of supply right from the driver to the availability on certain routes. On the other side, there is a lot of technology which is coming in for optimization. So that's the planning piece. In execution, I think I put it into 3 areas. First is the processes, how we can make it really agile, on the go. So we use, all of us you are familiar with usage of tools for our demand planning, supply planning and so on. How we can have the system and processes which ensure that we are agile and we can take care of incremental changes, not within month, within fortnight or within week. That is the process part of it. Second part, and which is I think extremely important in today's scenario to thrive, is how we make our teams synergized for agility. So agility is not just a decision top driven, we want to do from tomorrow this thing, but your entire team, entire orchestra should work, otherwise it will be a chaos. So how we actually lead our teams and make everyone agile, think on their feet at the same time, synergize together to to achieve the end objective. So there comes the people part. So in people skilling, in people way of working, how people work is the second piece. The third piece is where I think some of esteemed panel members come from in terms of solutions in IT, digital. So how we evolve our either wherever we have legacy systems and wherever we're putting new planning and distribution systems, which are really flexible and agile for the incremental changes, right from demand pattern in the market to the supply side disruptions which are happening, like our friend talked about. So if I have to source from China today and tomorrow I have to source from Indonesia or Vietnam, the lead time, everything will go for this thing, right? Costing, everything will change. So how dynamic is the planning tools we can make use of is the other piece in the execution which comes to my mind.
Very, very interesting thoughts. I think all the points that you made, flexible solutions, planning and team synergizing, I think play a very important part in orchestrating and putting things together, in managing the disruptions and be more agile in the phase. Great. Rajiv ji, I would like to come to you to just take your thoughts around as it's a challenging time in India, as I mentioned. The growth rates are high, which has been there for quite some time. There is the rise of this D2C and B2C verticals, along with earlier we saw modern trade as well as omni-channel supply chains which started, and now the MSMEs and SMEs are also playing a larger role in the growth of the economy. It's not that it's only larger companies which are there. So with these, the consumers are becoming quite demanding. Across different businesses that you work. So in your view, in your company, how are you able to plan and strategize with these times where the competition is increasing, the fragmentation is there, different supply chain channels are being created which were not there earlier. So we'd like to hear from you on this.
Thank you. I think, Chetan, this is an excellent question. So first of all, I'll just give a brief example. I think the best example of supply chain, if we find, is our kitchen. So that's the best example. See how our kitchen has changed. I come from Kashmir, which is northern part of India. So I remember in my school days, we had to store ration for 6 months because we knew winter is there, the road will be blocked, we'll not get anything. Look at that kitchen today. Today, even if you don't store anything, you have to get an egg in the morning, you ring up Blinkit, so the egg will come. So look at second example. Even in those times, when you had sudden rush of guests inside your house, did any guest go hungry and he did not have dinner? Our kitchen was the best example of supply chain. There was demand planning, there was demand forecasting, there used to be everything that if 2 guests came or 20 guests came, nobody would go hungry from the kitchen. It was managed in such a way. I think that was the wonderful example of supply chain is the kitchen. It's a chain. So if it breaks anywhere, then we cannot get control over it. Now, second part is we heard about COVID. COVID was a very bad situation, but it gave us opportunity also. Before COVID, who used to talk about supply chain? In my opinion, nobody. It was only limited to shop floor. Nobody used to discuss supply chain. Now look after COVID, from shop floor, supply chain professionals have moved from shop floor to top floor. So there is no board meeting today wherein we don't discuss supply chain. So no meeting is complete without discussing supply chain today. I think the people in the room have a very bright future. Give yourself a big hand at least. Now, look after COVID. So if we talk about global supply chain, so global supply chain, ultimately, what do we want? We heard about resilience. So yes, it has to be resilient, it has to be sustainable. So before COVID, there was one hub like China. So everybody, the entire globe was dependent, okay, we'll take from China and everything else. Look in COVID days, people with suitcase of money could not get a mask. They were running that we should get few masks, at least we can protect ourselves. Look at how breakdown happened in supply chain. I think we realized from that issue that India, Make in India or Indian supply chain, there has to be China plus one. Entire globe cannot depend on one country. But maybe we were not geared up to that extent. We did not get full benefit. Small countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam got maximum business and we could not attract much. Irrespective of being that we have the highest number of engineers in the world today. Our labor costs are down. We are 3 times less than China today in labor cost. So there was one time where Chinese labor was cheaper than us. Today, no more. We are as competitive as China. Only thing is we have to organize ourselves. So if we have to give that opportunity, we have our language is our big support. We speak English. We have highest number of engineers in the world. Our population is young. So young people, they want jobs and they can give that productivity and efficiency. We have all the elements there. So this is the right moment and right opportunity for India. This chance has come again because globe is today again looking at China plus one. Now how do we do it? We have to be best in quality, we have to be in cost, and then we have to be best in delivery. Speed, that is quality, cost, delivery. Which means while we are discussing that all tier 1 companies or OEMs, they have to be best in quality, cost and delivery. But we have to look to, at our tier 2 and tier 3, SMEs and MSMEs. We have to see, we have to look at historically what has China done right and what we can pick up from other manufacturing hubs. So one thing they have focused, which we have seen is, one is that they have made these clusters. So this cluster-based approach gives lot of efficiency. So we are also today thinking many states are progressive in that. We can see lot of incentives, lot of, even in Maharashtra, in Orissa, lot of states today are promoting that. So I think we have to focus equally on our tier 2 and tier 3 supplies, because our supply chain depends on them also. And they are the biggest source of employment today also. And unless they become good, no OEM, no product can become good, because still 70% they supply parts to us, and then only any product can come. And then coming to second part, that we have to try these systems. We cannot today be only that, like I think the previous speaker from Asian Paints also said, we have to focus on digital systems, because today the growth is too much. So we have to, right from demand planning is gone, we have to today focus on demand sensing. We cannot, I will tell you a small, what we, Luminous started our solar business. So we thought, okay, we'll make 500 megawatt solar panels, should be enough for 2 years. Before the plant could complete, we saw sudden rush in demand. So luckily we had taken enough land. Before the 500 megawatt was over, we started construction for factory for 1.3 gigawatt. And before 1.3 gigawatt will get over, we have to open another plant. So this is the kind of speed, this is the kind of demand that is changing. So demand planning, I don't think we have to now focus on demand sensing. And when we talk about demand sensing, we have to use modern tools, whether we talk about generative AI, whether we talk about conversational AI, whether we talk about, we have to use these tools so that our demand sensing can become better. Of course, there will be data in has to be correct, or garbage in, garbage out, if we don't put correct data. Then when we talk about how we have to develop our resilient, and when we talk about sustainable supply chains, so we have to think that little bit of automation we have to focus now. It may be low-cost automation. So when we talk about automation, the first thing, especially in SME and MSME, is it is high capex. But we can think of low-cost automation where we talk about little bit of robotics, little bit of machine learning, little bit of robotic process automation, which can create efficiency and visibility into the system, so that we reduce this non-value added work which we create. We create a lot of waste around us. Unless we eliminate that waste, how will we be competitive and how will we create that productivity? I think we have to focus on low-cost automation in the plants. Then when we come shipping out our products, today also the big part of our cost, logistics-wise, I think we are not globally competitive. We are expensive than entire globe in logistics cost, which means we have to look at multimodal logistics. We have to use that. We have to look at warehouses. We cannot keep them empty. Why only one organization has to use warehouse? Why can't we have, for example, somebody has summer business, somebody has winter business. Why can't we have combined warehouses? Why can't we have combined multimodal logistics? We talk about Gati Shakti. Why can't we have that national platform for logistics, that if I don't have a full load, we can all pool the load and create efficiency? Then only, so that is about the logistics. So similarly, there are many parts in this chain where we see that non-value added activities are there. So we have to optimize that, and this cannot be optimized unless we focus on making digital systems. Start small, use them, become efficient in that. And then finally, I think ultimate aim is we have to beat everybody in quality. We have to beat them in cost, and we have to beat them in delivery. This is the time where everybody wants low cost, he wants high speed, and everything should be fresh. So if we focus on these things, India is in the right place, we have the right opportunity, and definitely we have right manpower and right technology to do that. So this is our time, and we should encash that. Thank you. I hope it answers.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. It was a very good, perspective around how we are shaping India, as well as, be more competitive when looking at China, of course. And it also gives us a perspective that, we are not far behind. We'll be, marching ahead very, very soon. I think you touched upon innovation, quality, technology, fair bit in your discussion, and which is very relevant in today's world. I would ask Mr. Kapil that in your business, and you're handling businesses for multiple companies and managing their supply chains, innovation is something which is very critical to distribution that we have in India, and new technologies and automation. How is it driving? How are you driving it in your company so that your customers and clients benefit out of it? Please.
See, as exactly what Rajiv and Satyendra said, it's very important that what is happening is our country is essentially likely to become the third largest economy, which is a $5 trillion economy. And we are talking of an economy of, let's say, $17 trillion economy. So what is going to what is happening here is essentially you need people who can handle scale. Now, when you want to handle scale, handling scale would require a mix of man and machine movement. Now, what happens is when you need to essentially do a man and machine movement, you got to make sure that you do keep automating at various levels. What is relevant right now in terms of doing little automations, giving you an example altogether, and so there are loading times and unloading times of a truck, which ends up taking about 1 to 2 hours. Now, there are warehouses in our own set of warehouses where we need to make sure we are doing a throughput of, let's say, 50 to 100 to 150 trucks a day. Now, for doing this, we have to look at various kind of innovations. Innovations like how we can improve the truck turnaround times of the trucks which are coming in our warehouse. How do we crush it from 1 hour to 30 minutes? Now, for doing that, there are various technologies which are available. Now, we were essentially talking to a Finnish company. The name of the company is Active. Now, what Active does? Active typically have essentially, let's say, automated loading solutions. There, what happens is there are plates. You put the whole stock on the plate, and the whole plate goes inside the truck. And what happens is then the entire plate can come out. Now, this is a patented technology. What it does, it makes sure that truck is loaded in 10 minutes of time. But what does it require? It requires that the entire inventory has to be on pallets. So what is happening is Coke as a company has been able to do their entire movement on pallets, and by the virtue of which they are able to crush their turnaround times. Now, these are very small kind of technologies which are coming. Secondly, essentially what happens, the warehouse is growing. Earlier we used to store goods on the ground. Now we are storing goods vertically. Now when we are storing goods vertically, we also need to be mindful of where and what are we storing at what level. We also essentially define the heat map of the warehouse. Now, what does the heat map tells us? Where is the largest heat being generated? Where is the highest throughput happening? So you figure out if the A classification of goods need to be placed near the docks. The B classification of products need to be placed at this kind of docks. Similarly, the C level. So you build these heat maps. Now, with the help of these heat maps, you are able to reduce the transit time which a picker or a high-reach truck operator would need to load the warehouses, to load the trucks altogether and so. Similarly, in terms of innovations, we are all talking about sustainability. Now, we all buy pallets. Now, these wooden pallets are there. These pallets are wood pallets. Now, to reduce the carbon emissions, you can also look at pallets which can be made from agro waste. So there are vendors which are emerging in the market where you can buy pallets which essentially use the agro waste products which can be deployed in the warehouse. We're looking at those things as well. At the same point of time, we are all talking about route optimization, transit times, and also taking from what Rajiv was saying. So we are essentially looking at building a warehouse where we actually bring 3-4 non-food companies together and we store them together, and from there essentially we get that requisite scale to be able to invest more in automation. Because what happens is when we are doing automation in our warehouses, we also look at a payback. And at this point of time, a payback typically can come in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. About 3 weeks, I happened to visit a warehouse, which essentially was a quick commerce warehouse. And we were, like from my warehouse, we largely do B2B orders, we also do B2C orders. But the scale we operate is about 10,000 orders, 15,000 orders. Now the scale is required to manage 1 lakh orders a day. Now how do you handle 1 lakh orders a day? You've got to make sure that entire pick which is happening, because those 1 lakh orders have to be picked from a warehouse. A picker cannot go to any shelf and pick up one or two SKUs. Those products have to come to the picker. So there are various technologies, there are brands like, there are companies like Falcon, there are companies like Bastion, which are available, which are essentially making sure that you can pick goods to the tune of 1 lakh orders a day as well. And that's actually happening at a robotic speed. There are companies like KUKA from Japan, which have got robotic arms. Now these robotic arms are essentially helping us in terms of increasing the throughput of our warehouses. Now these technologies are now making sense because we have volumes now. So essentially what happens is, as we rightly said, there is a time for everything. And I think in the next 3, 4, 5 years of time, more and more these volumes go up. The need for these technologies, the need for this automation is going to go up. So Chetan, to answer your question, we as a company keep exploring these vendors very frequently, and we keep imbibing them in our warehouses at the levels where it is needed. Now, giving you an example, in some of our warehouses, we also do stock transfer movements, and the same warehouse is also used for doing the city movements, the distribution movement for the particular state. So what we've done is we've deployed dense racking for doing the stock transfer movements, and we are doing the selective pallet racking, let's say, for the state movements. But we are also making sure, while the pick is generated, we do a consolidated pick. We don't do an order pick, because what happens is, when you are doing automation, you've also got to do the analysis of the job safety. Analysis also needs to be done, because it's a combination of man and machine which is operating on the floor. You've got to make sure there is no collusion between man and machines. You've got to make sure the floors are safer. So what you do, you make sure that the pick which is generated is a consolidated pick, so that the picker is not going inside the aisles. It is only the sortation place within the warehouse where those pickers are operating. You've got to make sure that entire area where the machinery is deployed, less and less human movement should be there from a safety perspective. It should only be the high reach truck operators or the forklift operators which should be getting the stocks from there. So these are very small little things what we keep doing. But as you keep deep diving into your own, let's say, operational scenarios, you start innovating more and more to make sure life becomes more and more simpler for people working in your warehouses.
No, thank you. I think it's a very hands-on perspective around how we are, adapting technology and automation in our system now. I remember I used to work with Schneider about close to 22 years back, and I was based out of Hong Kong, and I was looking after the Asia-Pacific supply chain. And we used to visit to China at that point of time, and we had 42 factories in China, and in remote areas like Dalian, Tianjin, and all those places. And it was all automated, robotics, and that was 22 years back. Then there was a factory in Brussels, in Belgium, with Baxter, where we visited. It was a dark factory. So not a single person were in the warehouse. And it was shipping to about 140 countries in the world. And it was all robotics, dark. We had to switch on the light to, go even inside the warehouse. So that was what, was happening 20 years back around the world. And I think it's time for India now. It's taken a lot of time, but it's time for India now that these technology adoptions are coming. But the only challenge which still remains is that we are a very cost-conscious company. As a consumer, we are very cost-conscious. It's not that we don't want to spend. It's not that, multinational companies don't want to spend those technologies on those technologies in India. But, the consumer still wants a 2 rupee sachet. So what can we do? We have to work. Yeah, Rajiv. Yes.
Chetan, I'll just add to it. Like, I think sometimes, like we say this cost, we are too cost conscious. Imagine, see, the most idle asset in a factory. What is the most idle asset in a factory? Is the camera. We have these hundreds of cameras in the factory campus, and we expect security guard that he will look into any intrusion or something else. Imagine he has thousands of frames, hundreds of frames, hundreds of camera if a camera has a frame. 8 hours continuously focusing, can he detect anything? He cannot. Look at integrating a simple software to it. You can use same camera for intrusion. You can put simple video analytics software. Even your own software guys can do it. It can look at intrusion. It can look at safety. You don't require a safety guy looking safety inside the premises is there. Integrate it with a weighing machine. All your scrap, everything, it becomes a robotic process automation. You already have an asset. The biggest capex is already there. Integrate it with small software, it becomes a robotic process automation. Look at another example. We do this lot of measurements in IQC or whatever you may call it. So we do lot of measurements like length, breadth. Imagine we put a PLC and directly from that, it digitally goes into your SAP and measurement sits there. And we put a generative AI, which makes a decision whether it is okay or not okay. 100% foolproof, non-value added activity finished. So automation is not about all cost. I heard Japanese robotic arm we don't require. We can make robotic arm at as low as cost 30,000 rupees. Get servo motors, integrate yourself, your maintenance team, they don't have full job, full time. Why? If they have full-time job, then means they are not doing preventive maintenance correctly. Look at why they are busy, why there are so many breakdowns. So if we can give them this task, one is we improve their skill level, we improve their capability, and they take ownership of that. Let them take parts from outside, assemble it, small software, and a robotic arm is made. So it's not about all costs. We can start with this mindset that we have to do automation, low-cost automation, return will come. Imagine we have done these small things in our factories, in our supply chain, and return, even in 6 months we have got the best return. 6 months it gives back its return. Look at machine learning, small programs, you can, even small lockout, tag out, even if we deploy that small program, you will see breakdowns will reduce by 50%.
I think Chetan also has a view on this because it's a very intriguing conversation around automation and technology.
Yeah, I want to just add right what Rajiv has bring inside right with some of the practical example that we implemented. Like he mentioned about CCTV camera, and truly agree. Right, people feel that right it's a idle asset and how we can utilize that. So in our factory in Petronas, we use a CCTV camera, right, work as a part of the checker and maker protocols, right. In most of the organizations, part of the right maker and checker protocols, right, where there is a required double checks, right, and we put AI, right, with our camera, so that helps as a part of the checker, right. Once the one guy finishes his job, and if it's not completed, then it gives alarm, right. And oil and gas company, health safety is very, very critical. So we have a CCTV camera put across our gantry where if any person going above the truck without PP, it gives alarm, right? No requirement of security. So idea is, right, just to add, right, how the new technology can also helps, right, and generate a more ROI if people thinks in a different direction. Just to add, right? So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chetan. And stay on to that because I have another question for you. See, I have seen you have worked in very diverse and different companies in food, pharma, FMCG, and oil lubricants. So it's a very vast, knowledge that you have in supply chain and manufacturing and procurement, make, source, deliver. So you've worked in a startup kind of an environment, which was Viva Foods, and then you worked in a very, very strict quality, stringent environment like in Baxter. And you work with, companies in foods and now lubricants. These different companies had very different business growth rates. Large companies also, which are very stably growing at 5-6% an annum. Then there are companies which are, doubling every 3-4 years in their growth. What is the difference in supply chains that you see, and what kind of agility is required to manage these kind of disruptions in a startup or a fast-growing company versus a large company which is more stable in a growth? And so your views in this will be and your experience will be most relevant here.
Thanks, Sige. So I will split your question into two parts, right? Supply chain and scalability, how it is interlinked, and it's critical. So in my experience, with a diverse experience, right, I had an opportunity to work with an organization where a CAGR of like 45 to 50%, and also seen like a 10% CAGR. And I also believe, by understanding the various organizations, that the companies that are successful in scaling their business, the one thing is common, where the supply chain is a FAR, right? FAR, when I say, is a future-ready, agile, and the robust supply chain. It's very, very important, right, when anybody want to do a scalability, right? And supply chain create a more differentiation than any other function when organization want more scale than the category is growing. So let me give you my own example when you mentioned about Viva. So when I was working with Viva and it was growing like crazy, like 45 to 50%, in 3 years, we grew like 5x, right, in the organization. And to make sure that the organization continuously grow, the brand has to be established, it's available up to the end customers across the geography where we want to plan for a play. Right, we make sure that we build our organization with a full of agility. So when I'm talking about agility, right, agility doesn't comes with right spreading as a mindset, right? But certainly we need to build the program around that, right? So the area, right, of agility, which is also very important, right, when the growth rate is 45 to 50%, there is also important how we can have a strategic redundancy in the organization. So when I talk about the strategic redundancy, it means strategic redundancy around inventory, my capacity, right, my supplier, my service partners, right, and my capital as well. So I think it's very, very important, right, when we plan for such kind of a scale. So it's always, people think this always comes with a cost. But yeah, and that's why I mentioned as a strategic redundancy. As an organization, we need to take that call how long so that we can continuously incur that cost to build the scale. So that is very, very important aspects, right, when we want to achieve certain kind of a scalability. Though there are certain examples which is available in the market as well, right? Like, so when I was also studying, when I was a part of the Viva, how we can do such kind of a scale, right? So like Zara, right? Anybody working for Zara here in the room? No. Like we know that, right? The kind of a 37% growth, right? What they delivered in last, right, 5 years. Strategically, right? They moved into 2 to 3 weeks of a trend runaway. The fashion apparels compared to the category that was running with a 3 to 5 months of apparels runaway from the stores, right? So what required is required like a proximity of manufacturing. It's very, very important, and how they can go with a small scales. So like in Viva also, right, what we have done, so we build the plant, right, with a 50% additional capacity because we know the kind of a growth rate that we will achieve. And number two, we make more number of manufacturing line, which is a low cost manufacturing line, to make sure that at a time we can run like a 50-60 SKUs, right? So we can produce small, right, and that can be available in the market when we see the growth rate. So I think not for only one organization, but I think, right, when I also give an example for April, I think it's also very, very important that how they can, right, produce a small batch and create that more agility when they want to achieve the different kind of a scalability. So it's part of the, right, the scalability and agile and robust supply chain, which is very, very critical. For me, right, as you asked, CK, how it is important for the Petronas, but I can say for my organization currently, it's not only important, but it's very, very essential. Because as of now, as a company, we are growing 5x than the category. What category is growing in India? And with all kind of a current volatility, what we have seen, we have to remain agile. Like with the US trade war, right? What we have in last 3 months, right? We put us the war room and see that whatever the imports we are getting from the US, how we can just localize either from India or from some of the other Southeast country, so that we should not have any kind of a challenges, or how we can even invite some of the manufacturers to put their own manufacturing or back-end integration into our setup, so that we should not have that kind of issues. So I think it comes with certain agility and strategic decision that help us to sustain the performance, right, for the organization, and mitigate, evolve the challenges around the marketplace, and evolve the challenges of the regulatory aspects as well. So this is right, my view, right, on a scalability
Right.
and supply chain. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chetan. Mr. Milind, could I, come to you?
Hello.
You are currently looking after the Asia Pacific region, and it's a large region with very different economies. We have emerging economies, we have very developed economies like Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, which is kind of flat. It doesn't grow at all, right? And every different country has a different challenge that they are seeing. Whereas there is a slowdown in economy, there is a challenge. If it is high growth economy, there is a challenge. In your company, how do you see the strategic agility roadmap? And how do you integrate the AI automation? Are you doing it? Because in developed countries, you have to do it. In India, how are you doing it? And what is your, next 5 years roadmap for integrating technology and, managing supply disruptions from that perspective?
Okay. I think that the tone has already been set up right from, the people, automation, and the experiences I see from the team here, the seniors here. The answer for AI, the answer for automation, I think it goes back, Chetan, as you rightly said, when you were in Hong Kong, it started then. I was in there during 2008-9, and I realized that systems in developed countries are far ahead of us. I still remember I was part of no touch order concept then, way back into 2008 and 9. US, being an US company or German companies, they were all interested in looking at automation. So automation is not new to us. It's just that it triggered post-COVID that we need to get into, multiple times ahead of collecting data, putting it into the system, looking at different models. The way I look at AI and automation, it's surely changing supply chain in India too. In Asia, it's already ahead when you talk about Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, countries, though they have Australia being still flat, but still ahead of the systems. There is a behavior also, contributing to it. When I say that, since I look at Asia, I do see a different behavior of customers in different countries. Japan, for example, Australia, for example. They're pretty well planned, well ahead in terms of their forecasting, which manages the supply very well. But there are developing countries like India, Indonesia, talk about Thailand, where we really need to do the demand sensing, as you rightly was talking about. So the benefits I see from AI and automation for our organization, we are currently focusing on integrated business planning process. Earlier it was more manual, now we are getting into a predictive analysis. So SNOP plays a very important role on looking at the horizon of what we can really plan and what we can deliver. Along with that, we have SNOE, Sales and Operational Excellence Execution Process as well, which we do frequently in frequent intervals to analyze the red flags where we are, running short, how we can cope up with that, and what are the chances of mitigating those risks. We also look at end-to-end visibility. That's one of the topic, which is going through. So systems like TMS, supporting SAP, systems like AI forecast demand sensing coming into systems. When I look at the next 5-year plan, I do see that maybe this is the year when we are looking at accepting that AI is going to be our future. Again, each industry differs and manages it differently because we cannot just replicate what we see from Amazon or Flipkarts of this world into the industry we belong to, because each industry is pretty different. But as I heard Rajiv saying, that things can be managed, though it is cost effective, that we can manage what is needed. So it's all about raising to the business needs and seeing what is critical for our own business. So for us, we are focusing on powered warehouses, getting warehouses automated. Again, for me, being in the region and global, I've seen that 2 decades ago. And here we are now really, implementing those on a very rapid speed. Apart from that, I feel digital twin is playing a very important role, which mirrors what we do and actually gives us those ideas about where we stand based on the entire behavior of an order cycle. Now that helps. Digital twin surely is going to help us if we put different perspective and different scenarios to see what other results are coming out. Metaverse planning is another topic which is going to really be the future, where I think every company is going to go through that and put planning through predictive analysis and making decisions. Again, each industry is different, so it just cannot be a copy-pasted thing. Looking at the current service providers we have in India and the SMEs, the subject matter experts, I'm glad to see this happening because these were the kind of support we used to have in the global platform, and now we do see that talent in India is supporting that. No surprises that India talent were abroad and they were part of those, during those times as well. And nevertheless, in next 5 years, I think we have to adapt to this environment, which is more driven by the system throwing up the predictive analysis and then making decisions. I'm glad that I see that happening on a rapid speed in India. Again, but it's still a long way to go because each industry really thinks twice before making any investments, and it's again going back to the consumers and customers because customers are the ones who are driving the cost down, and that's where the limitations comes in. But having said that, I think we are on the right track. If we put the right systems in place, the right AI augmented reality in place, I think we can get what we want. And again, it goes back to the behavior of the management, the individuals and supply chain professionals, also the sales at the same time, talking about what they are going to achieve and what they are going to really deliver. So yeah, that's pretty much.
Thank you. It's very enlightening to hear from you about how you are doing it, especially the SNOP, SNOE, IBP, and then digital twins, adaptation of technology. I think we need this kind of leadership mindset which drives these changes in the next 5 years. There are two questions which are still there, and we may run out of time, but relevant to us in terms of strategic agility, managing disruptions, automation, etc. In the last 3 years, the quick commerce industry has just emerged. Yeah. And if you see the quick commerce industry, it's just supply chain. It's nothing else, right? It's order to delivery. It's all supply chain, managing inventory. And I was wondering that we have been working as leaders in supply chain. We've been innovating in companies. And these companies which have come up in quick commerce are no supply chain people, right? Still, they could manage to automate, integrate, digitize everything. Now, a consumer presses a button, he gets the product ordered, it gets delivered, everything is driven through technology. And today, and we work for many companies as a 3PL partner, and Kapil, you do, and you all have worked in very different companies. Still, there is this person who's calling from the distributor to, lock in the order, and then you punch it in the SAP or JD or whatever it is in Oracle or Navision, and then, you tell a person to go and pick up, and then, you pack it, and then you call a truck driver, and then you say you have to come at 6 o'clock for dispatch. What is happening? Now, that keeps me wondering, and it's an open question to everybody, and I would like to hear views from all, that look, these, I would say it started all with Zepto, with these kids, we can call them, right? 20-year-old came in, changed everything, and we have been sitting here for 25 years, and I look back and say that, what are we really doing? Are we still getting orders? Hanji, wo laga dena 5 liter ka order. So, I'll open the forum and
No,
let you
I'll
guys
quickly
take it.
relate to what you just said, and I'll give an example of a shark. If you have a shark in a tank, it will only grow to the size of the tank. But if you keep them in the open ocean, you know how big the shark can be, right? So that's an answer. Basically, we were put in the cage when we started our careers. And if you see the kids now, I mean, the next generation were actually in the ocean. They had no limitations to think through. And that has made a big change. And I think now, whatever we can grow getting out of the tank, we should. We should not stop doing that. I think I just put it in a more, example which is not related to operations, but that's what I can think of.
I'll just touch upon it a little differently. So we talked about the tools, or we talked about the advancement which are happening in technology and how it is enabling right from robotics to even e-commerce. I think one fundamental question is, as I ask myself as supply chain professional, is I look at and try to see what problem or opportunity I'm trying to address for my organization or the ecosystem I'm part of. Once we set that right, so e-commerce is basically addressing the opportunity of convenience. Okay, now how part is, there are a lot of technologies available. Somebody may do in X way, somebody may do it in Y way, but it's the convenience which they are offering. Whether it's Uber, Ola also, it's a convenience of booking, convenience of fulfilling the order. Similarly, when we look at our organizations or the roles we look after, what is the problem or opportunity I'm trying to address? Once we are clear on that, clear today and flexible enough to bring in more clarity as we evolve, because it's a dynamic. You can't set it for next 3 years or 5 years. As long as that is there, I think we can bring in all tools and techniques available. And good part is that a lot of automation is getting cheaper instead of costlier. Economy of scale on IoT is coming big time. Okay, so once we are clear, for example, for me, if I have to this thing, keep talking, and I keep this thing. One thing which supply chain can add value to our counterpart in sales is that, can I ensure that my sales team win a L2 order? L2 order we all understand, right? That means my quality and service is so superior that the customer is bound to pay me a premium. For that, what I need to do? If I need to do something on the distribution side or forecasting side, I'm looking at completely changing the B2P this thing because I anticipate that the current has lived its life. Okay, it has complete transformation. I'm looking at that in my personal this thing, and I'm passionate about doing that. Now, I don't know all the solutions right now, but I'm pretty sure because problem is clear. Some people are there in the panel. People like them will come, handy to solve those problems. The how part will be taken care of. So that is my take on
the question still remains is that when will this B2B game change to a B2C in the next 5 years? That's the question. Why does a salesperson still have to go and he has to order his inventory? What is the capability of the salesperson to manage the inventory of a distributor? And then that distributor has to give a manual order and which goes into a manual phone call and emails and all. When is this going to change is the question in the next 5 years.
Quick. It's all about the behavior and it goes back to that. So along with the AI and all the new tools we are doing, I think we should conduct those behavioral change management as an organization.
So has anybody started that in their SNOP or SNOP meetings to touch on this topic?
Yeah, that's the reason why I say this, because we begin this and we realize that having SNOP and along with that having SNOE is very important to understand where we really stand. Because it doesn't only talk about the short runs or short supplies from supply chain, but it also talks about the failures or the fallback from commercial and customers, where we stand. So if we really have to deliver the number, it has to be both ways. So
just want to appreciate the one thing, right, when you ask about why Zepto can do and other people cannot do, right? And normally, right, if you see any startup globally, right, not only in India, normally the all startup in innovation happens on a periphery of a regulatory framework, right? So startups do not have a right brand image then when they enters, right? When there is a big brand, right, they would like to work on a regulatory framework and say whether my brand image should not go down, right? When any new company comes, they works on outer periphery of the regulatory framework, right, and start disrupting into that areas, right? And that's provide, and once they have that idea, right, solution can be available, right, from a supply chain team, even though there is no supply chain guy in Zepto initially, but the all the tech solution has been given by a back-end supply chain people, right, who design and develop, right? So no dearth of availability of that solution, but important is how people can work on a periphery of a regulatory framework, right, to create a more disruption. That's important, right, when they work.
Right, thank you. I think we are running out of time.
Can I just
Yeah,
one
please
last thought?
quickly.
So I think you asked the right question, B2B, how it can become B2C. Like, see, already when we talk about innovation is when we solve a problem on time. If we solve it before time, then also it's not an innovation. After time, then also not innovation. So biggest example is that when we talk about what we see, the phone in its shape and form today was given by Apple. But this innovation was done by Motorola. Smartphone first was invented by Motorola, but it was before time. So that time nobody could understand usage because you could not link phone to everything. Now with metaverse coming in, all companies will have these virtual marketplaces. So these virtual marketplaces, consumer will directly buy from there. So you will see a big transformation in omni-channel now. So with metaverse and like virtual markets coming in, so you will see a lot of innovation. And ultimately, I think the end goal will be where company and customer will talk to each other. So I think that time is coming. So I think it is little before time, but one time it has
It's in
to
the
come.
5 years framework, right? Perfect.
Chetan, just a very right question which you asked. So I'll give you an example from B2B to B2C. Now, I work in the consumer space, essentially handle warehouses for a lot of FMCGs in the country. And I've been realizing, essentially, I'll talk about Levers particularly. Levers started a project called Project Samadhan in Chennai. And what they did, they're directly servicing the goods to the retailers. So there is no order taking which is happening from the distributor to the brand. What is happening is because India now has the ability to handle loose. Because we didn't have the capability to handle loose pieces. Now we have built that capability to handle loose pieces. And I think in times to come, as you rightly said, this is the way it is going. And almost all the companies would essentially directly be talking to the consumers. As Rajiv rightly said, we are ahead of times. Now Lever started with Project Sangam in Mumbai about 14 years back, before even the big baskets were born. And essentially Big Basket came essentially in the year 2014-15 and turned the tables upside down. It's also a matter of time. It's also a matter of capability because we've built that capability of doing e-commerce and quick commerce, and very soon you will see the shift happening from B2B to B2C.
Right. Thank you so much. I think we are really out of time. We could not do a open question and answer session, but we are available here. We are all here, and we can. If there are any questions, we are happy to answer them. Right. A very big thank you to all of you. It was a very interesting, intriguing discussion that we had. Right. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Just stay there. I would like to invite Prerna to felicitate each of you.